So here is my setup. This is my bench vise that it has a shaft extractor. You don't necessarily need this if this was a steel set on a steel shaft. You can just basically stick a toe down inside of a bench vise and take a Bernzomatic torch, you know, similar to what you're going to see work here in a second. In about 12 seconds of direct heat. You don't have to switch it or anything like that, just directly on the hosel. And then at that point, be able to pull, and you'll see it come off quite easily, okay? So I'll film it this way you can see how it really works. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, 12 seconds of direct heat. Now at that point, I'm putting that off to the side for a second, and all I'm doing is just basically pulling on the other end. And you can actually see the head starting to slide off. I was taught a long time ago when it comes to doing work on heads, right? Because you are dealing with a shaft, for instance, that is graphite. So if you could imagine, it's a lot like strings of spaghetti, right? If you're gonna grab them and they're gonna wind up, you know, if you're gonna twist it, it's gonna wind up pulling apart or be no good whatsoever, right? But this way you pull it directly across, it's pulling, you know, horizontally, and you'll just see that head come right off. You saw how easy it was all on camera. But the important part is being able to make sure that you do have a good quality puller. This is my old puller here. Not much different. The real difference between this one and this one is the spring tension and this little gizmo here that allows it to not take it off more straight. The old one, I used to think it used to want to bend upwards, and it used to put a little stress on the tip. But again, so that's that. I'm going to put you down. I'm going to go to that point where I have everything disassembled and all cleaned out, and then we can go from there. In fact, I'm going to put pause for a second. I'm going to set myself back up again and show you how I clean out the heads, because a lot of times I see people get to this point, but they don't show that part. Okay, so I'm going to put it down for a second. Okay, so as promised, I just wanted to sort of show you in there. Now this time there's a little bit of the ferrule that's left in there and a weight that you can see right on the inside. So actually, pretty simply, we need to get something that we can get in there that'll open that up a little bit to get that weight out. And obviously now that it's cooled down, it's going to wind up being a little bit tougher if we didn't have some heat applied. So we're going to go back to the Bernzomatic torch, go through the same process of about 12 seconds. You can see it's flashing up a little bit. Sometimes the plastic will flash a little bit, but just be careful. It's always best from a safe practice to try to keep the face of the hosel turned away from you, just in case it pops. Sometimes those things can pop, and you don't want any hot material on your face. Right, so then at that point, like for instance, you can use a flathead screwdriver. Fortunately, I have just a narrow little device that I've had for a long time that just helps me get material out of here. And in some cases, as long as you kind of work with it, sometimes they'll just fall right out. And then this way you can see, I don't think I have any pliers or anything. But yeah, so that was just a little tip weight. You can probably see that there. Doesn't weigh a whole lot, but yet, you know, for the build, it's significant. Now we're going to look back in the bottom just to make sure that it's cleared out. And they have other things like a bore brush, you could call that. Lots of little small devices that basically get it nice and clean on the inside. And that's all we're really looking to do, is get out large pieces of debris or something along those lines. I'm going to go back in and dig out again on the bottom to make sure, again, that there's no extra material. Now what I'm doing each time I do that is I'm looking at the bottom, looking down the hosel each time, and every time I do that, you'll start to see it become clearer and clearer and clearer until, hopefully, that'll come up. Now you can see all the way down to the bottom. So that's the bottom of the hosel itself. That would ensure that it's fairly clean at this point in time and that we won't have to do anything else. There's one other step, but I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to do that once I get the rest of them pulled off. So I'm going to pause, pull the rest of them apart. So the next shot you'll see will be the Titleist heads laying on the bench. Okay. So now, one of the things that I talk about now, and I always encourage for anybody who's ever interested in getting into club making in any way, shape, or form, is to get into really good habits, right? Especially when you're starting to deal with a situation like this, where we have, you know, shafts here that we've just extracted out of these heads, right? And all we're basically trying to do is take the shafts that are in this set that's over here and transfer them over. So the thing that can get a little confusing is trying to make sure, especially if you're in like a busy situation, like you're in a shop situation, and you're trying to do it as a profession, and you need to be aware of time, cognizant of time, you know, so on and so forth. You can get pulled away from things. So it's important to me, this is a habit that I personally use, is to always keep the shafts in size order and always keep the heads in number order from right to left for me. Again, this way I know that if I see one that's out, if there's a number out, I might have misplaced it, I might have put it someplace. Somebody might have gotten called away for just a brief moment to do something. So again, as long as I keep these in this type of an order, when I go to switch the shafts, I get everything to that point and then just grab a set of shafts, switch them over, and now I'm back in business. Because again, it might seem like a small detail. What in the world is he talking about that? It's helped me 1,000 times. If I, again, keeping everything in order, making sure I didn't put the 4-iron in the 5-iron and the 5-iron in the 4-iron, etc., etc. Those good habits you don't necessarily notice immediately, but you certainly would notice it as time went on, especially if you decided to do this for someone. And you know, it's the little things that can make a difference. Okay, so again, I just figured I'd take a second before I start ripping apart the other ones to show you some of those habits. Okay, all right, so hang on, and next time you'll see the disassembled set of TaylorMades with it as well. All right, so here we are, disassembled set of Titleists. This the assembled set of Mizunos, and like I was saying, you know, getting in a good habit of using, you know, the numbers to keep everything in line. 7, 8, 9 pitch, and that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in pitch. This way, when you make the switch from one to the other, you're not going to be confused by where the shafts are supposed to be and such. And again, if you're always keeping them in size order, taking a look here, everything is just laying on the ground. You'll see that there's a gradient from longest to shortest, and then at that point you can infer that it's going to wind up being the 5-iron down through the pitching wedge. All right, just to keep, you know, continue to keep clarifying that. The next thing I'm going to set back up, I'm going to weigh each one of these heads, so then we can get a pretty good idea of if we need to add tip weights or make any adjustments to the end result. Okay, so hold on. Hey guys, sorry about that. Fighting the sun here a little bit, so you might get some handheld shots for a few minutes. So look, like I said, sometimes this building thing is not just as easy as a shaft swap. Remember I was saying that I had to weigh those heads out. Well, here's the results, right? Remember I said an average 5-iron was supposed to be 254 grams, correct? Well, for the Titleist set, the 5-iron is 249, and you can see the differences going downwards. And here was the TaylorMade set, which was closer to that 254 standard. So actually the difference in mass between that 248 or 249 Titleist and that 257 TaylorMade is around 8 grams. So that 8 gram difference has to be made up if I wanted to make
that 5-iron shaft from the new set play like the 5-iron for 5-iron, I'd have to add 8 grams of mass to that Titleist head, and it just doesn't have the place for it. So what's interesting is, if you noticed before, the recoil shafts, there was a 4-iron down through a pitching wedge. And we talked about soft step, hard step, so on and so forth. Well, here's a situation where actually you can do it, and it should probably work out okay. I.e., that 4-iron shaft is looking for something that's going to be in that range of around 248, 249 grams. We can go back and take a look at our iron weights, and you can see here that iron weight is in the 4-iron is 247. So 247, 249, hey man, sounds like a match made in heaven. So now, is this soft stepping? I don't know, not really, because we're not looking at it in terms of flex, we're actually looking at it in terms of head mass. So again, we're not trying to polish something differently, we're just trying to get the shaft to bend appropriately, because it's looking for nothing more than just the amount of head mass on one side and how long and how, the grip on the other side. So again, to validate that, because again, I'm one that believes in swing weight. I think it's an important part to be able to give your swing some balance, right? Because there are 2 forms of force when you make a swing, centrifugal force moving out and centripetal force moving in. And I believe that it contributes to the centripetal side much more than the centrifugal side. I think the total mass of the golf club, length of the golf club, head shape, all those things will contribute towards that side going outward. But again, it's an important thing to be balanced. It's a whole lot like balancing a car tire, right? If you have a brand new tire and rim and you spin it at 55 miles an hour and it requires 1 ounce of lead at, degree number 210, that's what it needs in order to be balanced spinning at 55 miles an hour and not create a problem as you're driving. So swing weight, in my interpretation over the years, has been kind of along the same lines. So that's why it's important. And yes, you can be fit for it, and we'll have to do another video on that. Again, there's a lot of other things I'm setting up for it. But you can see that the importance of making sure that you're going through each one of these details as you're getting a set adjusted to yourself is significantly more important than just thinking, oh, I want this shaft, oh, I want this head. Look, there's a lot more to it than this. And what I can interpret and infer why there's such a massive difference between 5-iron for 5-iron is that this 5-iron head came with that Tensai AVS 60-gram shaft. And this one was originally built, the TCs, I don't think that they were available with graphite. So with that was built with a steel shaft in mind. So that probably is the reason why some of those heads are different. Now that they've gotten lighter shafts and such, many of the companies have adopted the ideas and philosophies of using what they call an A and B weight head, the lighter weight heads for the lighter weight shafts, just in case there needs to be some over length and such. And aside from which, if you have too heavy a head with a shaft that's lighter and theoretically a little bit more flexible, because it just doesn't have the mass to hold up to that, it's going to play so flexible and heavy that it's going to kind of miss the point, and it won't be of any use to somebody who has a swing that's either slower or they have a hard time being able to balance their swing in some way, shape, or form. So again, it's a benefit, to say the least, but I'm glad I caught it. So now again, the solution is going to be take the 4-iron shaft and from the recoils and put it in the 5-iron from the AP1, and then the AP3, 6, 7, 8, 9 in pitch will go along from there. So the 6 will go into the 5-iron shaft, the 7 will go into the 6-iron shaft, and so on and so forth. All right, so again, I'm going to switch over to a second and set up the swing weight scale so you can see exactly what I'm talking about as well. And it's sort of, again, more validation of why it's important to make sure you're paying attention to the details.